Hello, everybody. Welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today I want to talk about stage number 2 for Rainbow Six Siege's 2023 season. Of course, it is going to be the last stage for 2023. There are now only 2 stages. Maybe that'll change in the future. Hopefully, that'll change in the future, or at the very least, the gap between stages 1 and 2 will change because it is brutal. We've been waiting for quite a while now, and we still have about a month and a half to go till September 1st when leagues start coming back. So, really brutal wait period. There are some, T2 things going on. There was just Gamers 8, which was nice, but pretty small consolations for how big of a gap it was. The thing I actually want to talk about in particular today is the map pool change that they announced. So Nighthaven Labs and Consulate will be coming in to replace Villa and Theme Park. There will still be 9 maps in the pool, but they're changing out 2 of them for 2 new ones. Nighthaven Labs and Consulate, we'll see what happens with these. I think some people are skeptical. Consulate was a pretty solid map when it was in the pool. It went sort of back and forth. Defenders, attackers, they both had a good shot. It was pretty popular. I think it might have been the most played map at the last major it was at before it got removed, which makes you wonder why it got removed. But you can't ignore the fact that there are a lot of windows. There's a lot of rappel play. It's maybe not the most fun to play or to watch at some time. So a rework, I think, would have done it good, a smaller rework. We'll see how the new rework plays out. I think a lot of people think it's a bad map, but we haven't seen it played by pros, so maybe that sentiment will change up over time. I don't want to talk about Nighthaven Labs and Consulate too much. I think Nighthaven will be especially interesting. It's been, a while since we had a new map in the pool. In general, we've had a lot of reworks for a long time. I think if you were going to add one other map, maybe Outback, and I think some people would say that's a good choice. Some people would say that's crazy and way worse than these 2. Again, that's not really a debate I want to have today. I want to talk about why they removed Villa and Theme Park. I think that these are probably 2 of the worst choices they could have gone with. There's probably 5 or 6 maps that I would say should have been removed over these, and there's only 7 other maps in the pool besides these 2. Let's get into it a little bit. I, as a primer, pulled up a few tweets by some people. So Villa is officially out of the map pool. This was being said by Spoit. One of the most balanced maps gone just like that, yet we have maps like Border/Cafe left. I think a lot of people will agree with this sentiment, and you can just trade out these 2 maps for almost any map, and it would be the same thing. You could say any maps I think in the pool are pretty questionable, that they did not remove, except for, I think, probably Chalet. Maybe some people would argue Clubhouse, but in a sense, that's also like the stalest map of the game, which we'll look at how long maps have been in the pool in just a minute. One other tweet I wanted to show here. Super says, I have to say I strongly disagree with the map changes. As it stands, it appears as though Siege is removing more defender-sided maps while simultaneously releasing more and more overpowered defensive operators with seemingly no intent to nerf them. Of course, the defensive operators he's referring to are Azami, Solus, and Fenrir, the last 3 defensive operators added to the game, back to back to back, if you ignore the attackers, which are not nearly as impactful. These are 3 of the best, if not just the 3 best defensive operators and also just operators in the game. And defense also has the likes of Mira, Valkyrie, as well as a bunch of just other really solid operators that probably people wouldn't say are OP. There's still only 2 defensive bans, 1 per team, so even if you want to get rid of 2 of these new operators and the opposing team goes along with that, there's still going to be 1 of them in. You get rid of Azami and Solus, there's still Fenrir, and then also still Valkyrie, Mira, whatever operator you might have wanted to ban in the past. So yeah, I think this is something to keep in mind as we look at the things that we're going to be looking at. So let's take a look at the map pool overall. If you're not aware of what maps are in right now, before the changes, there are Border, Chalet, Clubhouse, Bank, Cafe, Oregon, Skyscraper, Theme Park, and Villa. Again, Theme Park and Villa being the 2 maps coming out. What's really interesting, I think, on this page is the times these have been in, and I think this provides a pretty good lens to examine things. Clubhouse has always been in the map pool, the only map to do so. Cafe, Oregon, they haven't been out very much, but they have been out nonetheless. Clubhouse has changed over time. It got a pretty significant rework. Not a massive one, but it is pretty significant. It made the 2 top floor bomb sites, defendable, as opposed to what they were before. And that was, like 5 years ago or something, 4 or 5 years ago. It was quite a while ago. And then recently it had a small rework, but didn't really change much. It changed the bar mostly, in okay amount, but not massively. And Villa, the 2nd longest standing map in the pool, always been in the pool since the map came out. No changes to it. I think maybe the spawns might have gotten tweaked a tiny bit, but the map itself hasn't really changed, and I think for a good reason. It's not a map that needs changing. If it was ever going to get reworked, I would hope that it's a very minor rework just to spice things up. It doesn't need any significant changes. I think it's one of the best, if not just the best maps in the pool. And for that reason, I think it's pretty questionable why they get rid of it. We will see a possible reason why they decided to get rid of the 2 in a minute. But Cafe, I think that probably the biggest offender at the moment, the one that probably should have gone objectively, as objective as something like this can get, and also just in the minds of most people. It's not a fun map to watch, not a fun map to play. It's been around so long that it's kind of stale. I do think there's some interesting play, like sometimes some of the objectives get played more than others. There's some interesting strats, but I think inherently it's flawed in the way that the main way you need to attack the map is just from repels and from the roof, and then maybe you get in and maybe there's some fighting, especially if it's like the bottom floor objective or something. But yeah, again, just the nature of the roof and the rappel is it's so brutal to play and watch. It's just very unfun. I think probably the main map that should have gone. Oregon, also pretty stale. It feels like this one's been in forever, and technically if you look at total time in the map pool, it looks like it's the second, just ahead of Cafe and like Consulate and a few maps, Bank. But yeah, it looks like Oregon is the second longest standing map overall, the most present map overall behind Clubhouse. It was in for a really long time, and then it went out and it got reworked and it came back. And I think the reason that it feels like it's been here so much longer than it actually has, and keep in mind it is still the 4th longest standing map at the moment, is that it gets played so much. And I think especially, and I didn't look at the data to back this up, but I'm pretty sure this is the case, especially if you look at T1 and T2. In T2, people love playing Clubhouse in Oregon. They are the easiest maps to learn and to play, and for that reason, maybe lazier teams just want to go here. Maybe they think that it's more a contest of skill rather than map knowledge. If you go to Skyscraper, the team with better strats and map knowledge, whatever, maybe they'll just come out on top, whatever. It might benefit some lower tier teams to learn some of the more niche maps rather than just play the defaults that everybody knows, but that's sort of beside the point. Yeah, Oregon just gets played so much and it's so stale. The same things happen most rounds. The bottom floor bomb site is probably top 2 in the game, along with the thrown bomb site on Theme Park. And I don't have the data for that either, but I think most people would agree that's probably the case, if it's not actually the case. Yeah, it's a really boring map, and maybe you think it should stay over some other ones, but I think it was one of the top candidates to go. Chalet, nothing really wrong with it. This one's got to stay. That would have been the most egregious removal of any map, I think. Bank, also pretty stale, so Border and Bank, it's sort of the same thing. They were both in the map pool for a very long time, and then they got removed, and then they got reworked, and then they got brought back, but both of their reworks were very small. They play pretty much the same way that they did in the past, and for that reason, if you've been watching Siege for a very long time, you've seen a lot of both of these maps, and you're probably tired of it. And Theme Park, the map that has been in the map pool the least of all the maps that are currently in. Yeah, I think it just wasn't given enough time to breathe and evolve, and a lot of that is probably to do with the fact that people just don't want to play it, seemingly. It gets banned more than pretty much every other map. It gets played the least, admittedly, and maybe that would change if it stayed in and Consulate and Nighthaven Labs replaced 2 other maps. Who knows? Maybe this would have changed over time. I think it deserved to stay in more so than some of the other maps. And then finally, Skyscraper, the last one to talk about. The second map that hasn't been in the map pool that long, both of them, Theme Park and Skyscraper, got a pretty short stint, and then they got removed, and, well, they're both back at the same time. I think Skyscraper is just a pretty bad map. It was a terrible map back when it was first in the map pool, and I still don't think it's a very good map. It's not interesting to watch. I don't think it's very interesting to play. Maybe some people think it is, but I don't think most people would say that. Overall, I think it was an easy candidate to go. If you're going to argue that Theme Park should stay because it hasn't had enough time to breathe, maybe you could say that for Skyscraper as well, but, most of the time there's only a few good options to attack any given thing. I don't know. I just think it's a bad map, not very interesting. I don't think it would have evolved too much more, but I could just be talking out of my ass there. I really don't like Skyscraper. I won't hide the bias there. If I was going to remove 2 maps, it would probably be Cafe and Skyscraper, and if not Skyscraper, if I was going to give it a little bit more time, I'd go with probably Oregon. So Cafe, Oregon, maybe Skyscraper. 2 of those 3. Certainly Cafe, though. And I think that's a pretty popular opinion. There's a lot of people that don't like Bank, a lot of people that don't like Border. Maybe you think Clubhouse is ultra stale, but for one reason or another, I think those are probably the top picks. And finally, let's look at the data for these maps. So not a massive set of data. This is just from the last 3 big events, not counting Gamers Age. So the last 3, I guess, official events, Jönköping, SI, and Copenhagen. So 2 majors and SI, and 3 majors, depending on, semantics and whatever. We have the 9 maps here, sorted top to bottom by how many times they were played at these events to the least. So Clubhouse, Oregon, Chalet, all pretty popular maps. Clubhouse takes the cake by far. Another thing to consider here, defensive win rate. So for example, Clubhouse, 60% of the rounds played on it in Jönköping were won by the defenders, and so thus 40% won by the attackers. You'll notice Theme Park and Villa, the two least played maps, Skyscraper tying with Theme Park, but still, you know, the two lowest ones here. I imagine that's probably just the metric that Blast or Ubisoft or whoever makes this decision went off of. They're like, oh, these are just the two least played maps, and Theme Park got a lot of its play at SI, but it was the least played map in Copenhagen. It was the tied for the second least played map in Jönköping, and then again, still not like super popular. Several maps outdoing it here, but you know, like top 4 or 5 or whatever. I assume that's why they got rid of them, but you'll also notice that they were two of the more defender-sided, not just the two most. Oregon actually the most defender-sided, and then Theme Park at number 2, and then we have, I guess, Clubhouse, and then Skyscraper and Villa. So Villa tied it, was that number 4? So 4/5, and then number 2 coming out. Oregon, most defender-sided map, but I guess it's pretty popular, pretty heavily played, I should say. So I guess ultimately, I guess the decision was just made based on this, right? You know, they just weren't played that much, and maybe also because they were defender-sided. Maybe that is how they're trying to balance the game. They're trying to give defenders a really strong tool, but make the map work against them. Maybe they think that'll make for a good viewing experience. I was very surprised that Villa was actually the least played map at these 3 events. I would imagine it was at least in the middle, if not higher up, but yeah, it's not played an absolute ton. And I'm not so surprised for Skyscraper and Theme Park. These are both sort of niche maps, get banned a lot, aren't liked by a lot of teams, and you know, they're used as counter picks and whatnot a lot of the time. So I guess that's about it. I mean, I didn't do a ton of analysis here. I guess I did suggest a few things, but I mostly showed you guys the numbers. So I mean, how do you guys interpret these numbers? It's, I guess, well, the numbers, and then also what I talked about as far as the maps being in, and then I guess also the sentiments. You know, do you agree with what Spoit said? Do you agree with what Super said? And I think for the sake of not rambling on and extending this video much more, I'll probably call it here. So I assume you guys have a lot to say. I'd love to hear it in the comments. Let's have a little bit of a conversation. Like and subscribe. That would be appreciated. And with all that being said, I will catch you guys later.